The Alpha King was seconds away from choosing a new Luna when the palace doors burst open. Rain crashed into the royal hall, guards reached for their weapons, and two identical boys stepped inside. At first, the nobles laughed, because the twins looked no older than 12. But the laughter disappeared the moment the older boy lifted his head. Silver eyes, royal silver, the exact same rare eyes carried by the Alpha King himself. The entire hall went still. On the throne, Alpha King Caelric Dane slowly rose to his feet. For 12 years, nobody in the kingdom had seen those eyes outside the royal bloodline, because 12 years earlier, the king erased his mate from history. No portraits, no records, no mention of her name. The kingdom was told she betrayed the throne before disappearing forever, and anyone who questioned the story learned very quickly to stay silent. The younger twin stared directly at the throne. No fear, no hesitation, only anger. Then he spoke. "You erased our mother from history." The Alpha froze. A violent pain suddenly ripped through his chest. His silver cup shattered against the floor. Gasps spread across the royal hall as dark silver light burned beneath the king's collarbone. The dead mate bond. Alive again, several elders stumbled backward in horror, because the Alpha King's bond had been silent for 12 years, silent since the night his mate vanished. The younger twin took another step, but you could never erase the bond. Entire palace fell into complete silence. Then the older twin reached beneath his cloak and pulled out a silver moon pendant hanging from a broken chain. The Alpha King's face lost all color, because he buried that pendant 12 years ago beside the blood-stained cloak of his missing mate. The younger twin's silver eyes began glowing. "Mother said the moment you saw us," voice echoed through the silent hall, "you would finally remember what you did to her." Alpha King staggered backward. Fear appeared in his eyes for the first time in years. Impossible. Cut to intro. The royal hall remained frozen long after the twin boys were taken away. No music returned. No one continued the ceremony. Even the servants moved carefully through the palace corridors, as if speaking too loudly might awaken something the kingdom had spent 12 years trying to bury. Because the moment the dead mate bond burned alive again, everything changed. The Alpha King stood alone inside the throne chamber long after the nobles were dismissed from the hall. The shattered silver cup still lay across the marble floor near the throne. No servant dared touch it. No guard dared speak first. For 12 years, the kingdom of Valor believed one truth. The former Luna betrayed the crown. That was the story repeated across every territory under the Alpha King's rule. The story carved into royal records. The story taught to soldiers. The story whispered through villages whenever the moon rose high enough to remind older wolves of the woman who once ruled beside their king. But there was one detail the kingdom feared more than the betrayal itself. The Alpha King never spoke her name again. Not once. Not during council meetings. Not during ceremonies. Not even during the yearly moon rite honoring past rulers. It was as if the woman had never existed at all. Within days of her disappearance, every portrait of the former Luna vanished from the palace walls. Servants were ordered to remove her paintings under guard during the middle of the night. Some claimed they watched royal soldiers carry entire portraits into the palace courtyards before setting them ablaze without explanation. Others swore the Alpha King himself stood beside the fire until the final frame turned to ash. No official record confirmed it. Because the official records changed too, royal archives were rewritten. Her royal seal disappeared from ancient documents. Even books mentioning her bloodline vanished from the palace library. And slowly, fear replaced memory. The older servants remembered the change most clearly. The silence. The way conversations stopped the moment her name almost surfaced. The way council elders lowered their voices whenever discussing the past. The way entire wings of the palace remained sealed for years afterward. No celebrations were held in the Eastern Garden anymore. The moon pavilion overlooking the frozen lake remained abandoned. And the chambers once belonging to the former Luna were locked behind iron doors. No servant was permitted to approach. Yet despite all the silence surrounding her disappearance, rumors survived. Rumors always survived. Some believed she truly betrayed the kingdom. Others claimed she uncovered something inside the palace before vanishing. Several former guards quietly disappeared after asking too many questions about the night she left. And according to the oldest servants, the Alpha King was never the same afterward. Before her disappearance, Caelric Dane ruled like a man chosen by the moon goddess herself. Respected, feared, untouchable. But after that night, Something changed inside him. The wars became bloodier. Executions became public. Trust became rare inside the palace. And whatever softness once existed inside the Alpha King disappeared with the Luna the kingdom no longer acknowledged, now 12 years later. Two boys carrying royal silver eyes had walked directly into the palace carrying her memory. And for the first time in years, fear had appeared inside the royal court. Deep beneath the western tower of the palace, the twin boys sat inside separate stone chambers guarded by royal wolves. Yet strangely, neither child appeared afraid. The younger twin leaned silently against the cold wall while chains rested untouched beside him. He had refused food twice, refused water once. And throughout the entire night, he had spoken only 4 words. He remembers her eyes. The guards reported the statement immediately. No one understood what it meant. The older twin remained even calmer. When questioned by palace officials, he answered only what he chose carefully, never raising his voice, never appearing intimidated. Even when surrounded by armed guards, he watched the royal interrogators with unsettling patience, as though he already knew something the entire palace did not. By midnight, rumors spread faster than control could contain them. Servants whispered that the twins carried the former Luna's blood. Several elders demanded the boys be executed immediately before the kingdom descended into chaos. Others feared touching them at all after witnessing the Alpha King's bond react inside the royal hall. Because there was one terrifying truth none of them could explain. Mate bonds did not awaken for strangers, and dead bonds did not return after 12 years. Inside the upper palace corridors, servants quietly relit candles beneath towering portraits of past rulers while avoiding one specific section of the hall entirely. A long empty space remained between 2 ancient paintings. No portrait hung there, only darkness against the stone wall. New servants often questioned it. Older servants never answered. Because that empty section once carried the largest portrait in the palace, the portrait of Vaylor's former Luna, the portrait removed the same night she vanished. One elderly maid still remembered the exact moment soldiers carried it away. She remembered the broken expression on the painter's face as royal guards destroyed years of work without explanation. And she remembered something else. The former Luna had been pregnant before she disappeared. The information never reached the kingdom, never reached the official records. Yet several palace maids knew the truth before fear forced them into silence. Now the twins had arrived carrying the exact age those unborn children should have been. And suddenly old memories, the palace spent years trying to bury, began resurfacing everywhere. Meanwhile, inside the council chamber, arguments erupted behind locked doors. Several elders demanded answers from the Alpha King himself. But Kaelric remained silent throughout most of the meeting, because his attention remained fixed on one terrifying detail. The younger twin possessed her eyes, not similar eyes, not familiar eyes. Hers, and worse, the bond inside his chest still burned. The pain refused to fade. Every pulse dragged fragments of memory back into his mind. Silver hair beneath moonlight, soft laughter echoing through palace gardens. A woman standing beside frozen like water whispering promises against his throat. Then blood, screaming, a door slamming shut. And something else, something missing. The Alpha King suddenly realized there were pieces of that night he could no longer remember clearly. That frightened him more than the twins themselves, because Alpha wolves did not forget, especially not moments powerful enough to destroy kingdoms. Far below the palace, the older twin finally broke his silence shortly before dawn. One royal guard approached his chamber carrying fresh restraints ordered by the council. The boy barely looked up. Then quietly, he asked a question no outsider should have known. Does the eastern garden still freeze before sunrise? The guard froze instantly. Because only a handful of people inside the kingdom knew about the frozen flowers hidden inside the eastern palace gardens. The former Luna planted them herself years before her disappearance. And after she vanished, the flowers continued blooming every winter despite the ice. The guard stared at the twin in disbelief. The boy slowly lifted his silver eyes toward him, then asked something even worse. Did the king ever reopen her chambers? Voice lowered slightly. Or does he still stand outside the door alone at night? The guard's face drained completely. Because no one knew that. No one except the servants who secretly watched the Alpha King walk the eastern corridor after midnight for the past 12 years. And suddenly, the palace guards realized the twin boys knew details Only the forgotten Luna herself could have told them. The news of the twin boys spread through the palace before sunrise. By morning, the entire kingdom had begun whispering again. Servants carried rumors through corridors lined with silver candles. Royal guards exchanged uneasy glances during shift changes. Even the council elders lowered their voices whenever footsteps approached the chamber doors. Because no matter how many times they repeated the official story, the twins should not have existed. Yet deep beneath the western tower, the boys remained imprisoned under heavy guard while the Alpha King's council searched desperately for answers. And somehow, the twins looked calmer than everyone around them. The older twin sat quietly near the chamber window where faint moonlight crossed the stone floor. Chains rested untouched beside him. 3 guards watched him from outside the cell. None trusted him enough to look away for long. Not after the questions he asked the night before. The boy's expression rarely changed. Even now, his silver eyes moved carefully across the chamber as though studying every weakness hidden inside the palace walls. Every guard rotation, every locked gate, every sound, nothing escaped his attention. Unlike his brother, the older twin never wasted emotion. He spoke little, observed everything, and answered questions only when it benefited him. The palace interrogators noticed it almost immediately. The boy never reacted like a frightened child. He reacted like someone trained to survive. Across the corridor, the younger twin remained far less controlled. Lycan paced the chamber like a caged wolf, restless, dangerous. His temper surfaced quickly whenever guards mentioned the Alpha King. Twice, palace wolves attempted questioning. Twice, they left shaken. The younger twin's hatred burned too openly to ignore. Every time Kaelric's name surfaced, the temperature inside the chamber seemed to change, and the guards began noticing something else. The silver glow inside the boy's eyes appeared stronger whenever he became angry. No one mentioned it aloud. Not yet. By midday, orders finally arrived from the royal council. Separate interrogations. No physical harm, no direct threats. The kingdom needed answers before panic spread beyond the palace walls. The older twin entered the council chamber first. 6 elders waited inside alongside 2 royal guards and the kingdom's chief interrogator. Ancient silver markings covered the chamber floor beneath candlelight, designed to weaken hostile wolves during questioning. Yet the older twin showed no reaction after entering. If anything, he looked disappointed. One elder leaned forward slowly. "What is your mother's name?" Silence. The boy studied the chamber carefully before answering. "You erased it." Elder's jaw tightened. "Answer the question." Older twin's expression remained calm. "You already know her name." Tension inside the chamber thickened immediately. Another elder stepped forward. "How long has your mother been hiding?" This time the boy looked directly toward the council table, long enough to stop trusting kings. Several elders exchanged uneasy glances. The interrogator changed tactics quickly. "Where did she take you after leaving Valor?" The older twin remained silent for several seconds, then finally, "She never stayed anywhere long." For the first time, emotion crossed his face, brief, controlled, but visible. "She said if the kingdom found us, we would disappear the same way she did." The chamber fell quiet. One elder frowned deeply. "You expect us to believe the former Luna spent 12 years hiding from her own kingdom?" The older twin slowly lifted his silver eyes. "She wasn't hiding from the kingdom." His voice lowered slightly. "She was hiding from someone inside it." Crush the chamber again. Even the guards shifted uneasily. Because for 12 years, the palace insisted the former Luna betrayed the crown willingly. Yet the twins spoke as though she had been hunted, as though she had escaped something, or someone. The interrogator pressed harder. "If your mother feared the kingdom so much, why send you here now?" For the first time, the older twin hesitated, not from fear, from caution, then quietly. She knew the king would eventually remember. Elder closest to him leaned forward sharply. "Remember what?" But the older twin said nothing else. The interrogation ended minutes later with fewer answers than before, and somehow the council felt more unsettled after speaking to him. Meanwhile, Lycan's interrogation went far worse. The younger twin entered the chamber already angry. 4 additional guards stood nearby as precaution. Unlike his brother, Lycan made no attempt to hide his hatred. The moment one elder called their mother a traitor, the younger twin slammed both hands against the interrogation table hard enough to crack the stone. Several guards instantly drew weapons. The elder stepped backward in shock. But Lycan barely noticed. His silver eyes burned brighter. "You speak about her," he said coldly, without knowing what your king did. One guard moved forward immediately. Control yourself. Turned toward him slowly. The chamber temperature dropped so suddenly several candles flickered at once. She spent 12 years running because of this kingdom. His breathing sharpened. Every village we stayed in eventually became unsafe. Images flashed through his mind while anger poured from him uncontrollably. Snow-covered forests, abandoned cabins, their mother locking doors at night before checking windows repeatedly, her waking at every sound, her hiding their faces beneath cloaks whenever royal soldiers passed nearby roads. And through all of it, she still spoke about the Alpha King with sadness instead of hatred. That confused Lycan more than anything. Because despite everything she lost, she never allowed them to hate him completely, even while hiding, even while afraid. Even after the nightmares that woke her screaming some nights, the elder interrupted his thoughts sharply. If she feared the king so much, why keep his children alive? Lycan's expression darkened instantly. She loved him. The chamber fell silent, even the guards looked stunned, because hatred would have made more sense. But love, after 12 years, after exile, after erasure, Lycan's fists clenched. That was her greatest mistake. Elder carefully studied him. You blame the Alpha King. Laughed once. A cold sound without humor. He erased her like she never existed. Glow inside his eyes intensified again. And now all of you stand here pretending you don't know why she disappeared. One elder suddenly slammed his hand against the table. Enough. Younger twin rose so quickly several guards moved forward immediately. The chains around his wrists rattled sharply. You're afraid, Lycan said quietly. No one answered, because he was right. The palace was afraid the twins carried the truth. Afraid the former Luna may never have betrayed the kingdom at all. Afraid the Alpha King himself might have destroyed the wrong person 12 years earlier. Then suddenly, Lycan's expression changed. Pain crossed his face briefly. The silver glow inside his eyes flared violently. The ancient markings beneath the chamber floor began burning. One guard shouted in panic. The walls trembled. Candles exploded across the room. And before anyone could react, a massive wave of silver force burst from the younger twin's body and slammed through the interrogation chamber hard enough to throw royal guards across the floor. The elders screamed. Ancient symbols carved into the stone walls lit up instantly. Several windows shattered at once. Then one terrified elder whispered the words no one inside the chamber ever expected to hear. Ancient royal blood. The explosion inside the interrogation chamber shook the western tower hard enough to wake half the palace. Guards rushed through the corridors. Council elders stumbled out of the chamber in panic. Several candles throughout the lower halls extinguished at once, as ancient markings carved into the palace walls continued glowing silver long after the blast ended. And at the center of it all stood the younger twin, breathing heavily, silver light burning inside his eyes. Even he looked shocked by what had just happened. 3 royal guards remained unconscious against the stone walls. One elder refused to step back inside the chamber at all. Another immediately ordered the western corridor sealed. Because every person who witnessed the explosion understood the same terrifying truth. The power released inside that chamber belonged to the ancient royal bloodline of Valor. A power believed lost generations ago. Yet somehow, a 12-year-old boy had awakened it by accident. Far above the western tower, the Alpha King felt the moment it happened. Pain exploded through the mate bond beneath his collarbone so violently that Kaelric nearly collapsed beside the council chamber balcony. His hand slammed against the stone railing as silver light flashed beneath his skin again. The bond was growing stronger. That should not have been possible. For 12 years, the connection remained dead. Silent. Empty. After the former Luna vanished, the Alpha spent years forcing himself to accept the truth the kingdom repeated endlessly. She betrayed him. She betrayed the crown. She disappeared willingly. That was the official story. The only story. Yet now, every certainty inside him was beginning to fracture. The twin boys should not exist. The bond should not respond to them. And the memories returning to him made even less sense. Kaelric closed his eyes briefly. The moment he did, another vision struck him without warning. Moonlight spilling across silver curtains, soft laughter echoing through palace gardens. A woman standing barefoot beside the frozen lake wearing white ceremonial silk. Her silver hair moving gently in the winter wind. Then, her face turning toward him, smiling. Not fearful, not cruel, not the face of someone planning betrayal. The vision shifted suddenly. Warm hands against his chest. Her voice low enough that only he could hear it. "You're starring again." The memory felt painfully real. Kaelric could almost feel her fingers against his skin. Then another image surfaced immediately after. The sacred bond ceremony. Ancient silver flames surrounding them beneath the moon temple. The priestess cutting their palms before binding their blood beneath the moonlight. He remembered the exact moment the mate bond awakened between them. The force of it. The way her eyes widened in shock before she smiled through tears. And he remembered something else. He had loved her completely. Not as king. Not as alpha. As a man. The realization struck him harder than the visions themselves. Because somewhere during the past 12 years, he had stopped remembering that part. His chest tightened violently again. Another flash. Her laughing while running through the eastern gardens. Her stealing his royal cloak during winter storms. Her falling asleep beside him with moonlight crossing her face. Memories returned faster now. Too fast. So vivid they nearly drowned him. Then suddenly, everything changed. Blood. Screaming. Dark corridors. The sound of wolves roaring somewhere inside the palace. Kaelric's breathing sharpened instantly. This was the night she disappeared. The night everything ended. He forced himself deeper into the memory. A door slamming shut. Royal guards running through eastern corridors. Someone shouting that the Luna had betrayed the crown. Then, her face again. Not smiling this time. Terrified. Crying. Saying something to him. The Alpha strained to hear the words. But the memory blurred violently. The sound vanished completely. Then darkness swallowed everything. Kaelric's eyes snapped open immediately. His pulse hammered violently inside his chest. No. Something was wrong. That memory never ended properly. For 12 years, he remembered the accusation. The blood. The disappearance. But now that the visions were returning, he realized there were pieces missing. Entire pieces. The Alpha King slowly straightened from the balcony railing. His hands trembled slightly. That had never happened before. Not during war. Not during battle. Not even during the night she vanished. But now fear crept into him for the first time in years. Because alpha wolves did not lose memories naturally. Especially not memories connected to a mate bond. Yet parts of that night felt damaged. Broken apart. As if someone had ripped sections away and left only fragments behind. Far below the palace, the younger twin remained restrained beneath heavy guard after the explosion. Ancient silver chains now covered his wrists. But even restrained, the atmosphere around him felt dangerous. Several guards refused to enter the chamber alone anymore. In the moment the Alpha King arrived outside the western tower, every royal wolf lowered their heads immediately. Kaelric said nothing while entering the chamber. His eyes locked onto Lycan instantly. The younger twin looked exhausted, but the anger inside him remained untouched. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Kaelric noticed something hanging partially beneath the boy's sleeve. A faded silver thread tied around his wrist. His chest tightened again immediately. Because he recognized it. The former Luna used to tie silver protection threads around wounded soldiers before battle. She believed moon thread carried blessings from the goddess herself. Almost no one inside the kingdom remembered that tradition anymore. Yet the younger twin wore one around his wrist. Kaelric stared at it silently. Another memory surfaced without warning. Her hands tying silver thread around his own wrist before his first war campaign. "You always return to battle like you're trying to die," she whispered softly. The memory hit so suddenly that Kaelric stepped backward slightly. Lycan noticed immediately. Hatred flashed across the boy's face. "You remember her now, don't you?" The Alpha looked at him sharply. Lycan's silver eyes darkened. "She said this would happen eventually." Kaelric's voice lowered carefully. "What did she tell you about me?" The younger twin laughed once bitterly. "She told us you weren't always like this." The words landed harder than expected. For the first time, Kaelric found himself unable to answer. Because somewhere beneath the kingdom feared. He barely recognized the man he used to be either. Silence stretched between them. Then Lycan spoke again. "She never stopped loving you." The chamber went still. Kaelric felt the mate bond pulse violently once more. Pain mixed with something worse. Guilt. The younger twin's eyes never left him. But every time she heard your name, his jaw tightened. She looked afraid. The Alpha's breathing slowed heavily. Again. The memory tried returning. The night she disappeared. Her crying. The corridors. Blood. Someone shouting. Then emptiness. Missing pieces. Missing truth. Kaelric suddenly realized something terrifying. He could no longer remember who accused her first. He could not remember seeing her commit betrayal himself. He could not even remember the exact moment she vanished. Only chaos. Fragments. And rage. The Alpha King slowly lifted his eyes toward the younger twin. Then finally, for the first time in 12 years, he admitted the truth aloud. "I don't remember the full truth." The words Kaelric spoke in the Western Tower did not leave the palace. They spread through it. By sunset, every corridor carried the same silence. Servants avoided eye contact. Guards spoke in short sentences. Council members stopped meeting openly and instead gathered behind locked doors deep within the upper wing, because the Alpha King had said something no one ever expected to hear. "I don't remember the full truth." That single line fractured the certainty holding the kingdom together. If the king could not trust his own memory, then the official story of the former Luna no longer stood unchallenged. Orders were issued immediately. The twins were to remain under strict observation. No contact between them, no unsupervised movement, no communication with palace staff. But the palace had already miscalculated something. Chains and guards controlled bodies, not awareness, not patience, not thought. That night, while most of the Western Tower guard rotated shifts, the older twin studied the stone wall of his chamber without moving. His eyes traced faint lines carved into the structure, old markings, older than the current rain. He pressed his palm against a section of stone that felt slightly different from the rest, cooler, smoother, recently touched. He waited, counted footsteps outside the corridor, measured guard spacing, then quietly called his brother. Lycan did not answer immediately. He was sitting on the floor, staring at nothing, jaw tight as if holding back something heavy inside him. But when his brother repeated the motion toward the wall, he stood. No words were exchanged. They both understood what they were looking for. The palace did not change without reason. And the section of wall the older twin had found was not part of the original design. A seam ran vertically through the stone, almost invisible, but not entirely. The younger twin placed his hand against it, warm, too warm. As if something behind it still carried life. He pushed lightly. Nothing moved, then again, harder this time. A faint sound answered from within the wall, not stone breaking, not wood shifting, something locking. The older twin stepped closer, narrowing his eyes. "This was sealed after her disappearance," he said quietly. Lycan's expression tightened. She was here. Statement was not a question, a confirmation. The younger twin moved his fingers across the seam until he found a hidden indentation. A symbol carved so faintly it almost disappeared into the stone. A crescent moon split in the center, their mother's crest. The air inside the chamber changed immediately. Even the guards outside shifted uneasily. Because no official record inside the kingdom allowed that symbol to exist anymore, Lycan pressed harder. The wall responded this time. A low mechanical sound echoed through the chamber as hidden locks released one by one inside the stone. Then slowly, a narrow opening appeared. Cold air drifted out from the darkness beyond, the kind of air that had not moved in years. The older twin stepped forward first. Lycan followed without hesitation. Inside, the tunnel was narrow and unlit. Stone steps led downward into a forgotten section of the palace no current map acknowledged. The walls were lined with faded markings, some royal, some personal, all deliberately covered. Halfway down, Lycan stopped suddenly. His fingers touched something on the wall, dark stains, not fresh. Not old enough to be natural decay, preserved, kept in place by a faint layer of residual magic. The older twin leaned closer. His expression changed for the first time since arriving at the palace. "These are blood marks," he said quietly. Lycan said nothing. He traced one of the stains slowly, then another. The pattern was uneven, not from battle, not from execution, from something controlled, something restrained. A chill passed through the tunnel. And for the first time, both twins understood the same unsettling thought without speaking it. Their mother had been inside this part of the palace after she vanished from official record, not as a guest, not as a ruler. As someone held here long enough for the stone itself to remember, Lycan's jaw tightened. "She didn't leave," he said. The older twin nodded slowly. "She was taken." They continued deeper until the tunnel opened into a hidden chamber. Dust covered everything inside, broken furniture, collapsed shelves. A desk positioned against the far wall, and behind it, a sealed compartment built directly into the stone. Lycan approached first. The lock was older than anything they had seen so far, but it was not what stopped him. It was what sat beside it, a small object placed carefully on the desk. A leather-bound book, unmarked, untouched, waiting. The older twin stared at it for several seconds, then spoke softly. "She knew we would find this." Reached out slowly. His fingers hovered above the cover, then stopped. Because something inside the chamber felt wrong. Not danger, not warning, something heavier, like a truth that had been waiting too long to be seen. Finally, he opened the book. The first page contained only a single line written in careful handwriting, and the moment Lycan read it, his expression changed completely. He went still, then whispered the words that made the entire hidden chamber feel smaller. She wrote this after she was erased. The hidden chamber remained sealed in silence long after the alarm above faded into distance. No footsteps, no voices, only the faint echo of the palace settling back into uneasy calm. Inside, the diary still rested open on the stone desk. No one touched it for several moments, as if even the air around it felt too heavy to disturb. Then slowly, the Alpha King stepped forward alone. No guards followed. No council members dared enter after what had been found beneath the palace. Only him. The moment his hand touched the book, something inside him tightened, not fear, something closer to recognition without memory. He opened the first page. The handwriting was uneven, rushed, as if written in moments stolen between danger and silence. "I don't know how much time I have left." The words pulled something deep inside his chest, though he could not explain why. He turned the page. "I was never disloyal to him." Alpha King stopped. Read it again, and again. As if repetition could force it into something else. But it did not change. The line remained the same. "I was never disloyal to him." His grip on the edge of the page tightened slightly. The next entry continued with heavier strokes. "I told him everything I discovered inside the palace. But someone was already waiting for me before I could prove it." A pause followed in the writing, then another line. "They told me if I spoke further, the kingdom would fall into chaos." King's expression shifted faintly. Not outwardly, but inside something uncertain began to form. He turned the page. The ink became darker in places, smudged in others. "I am carrying his children." The words hit harder than anything before. The Alpha King froze completely. The page trembled slightly in his hand. The writing continued beneath it. "I can feel them. I won't let them take my sons from me." His breathing slowed, controlled, but uneven. The next lines were more broken. "I tried to stay. The palace guards came for me before sunrise. I heard them speaking outside my chamber. They were not sent to protect me." King's eyes narrowed slightly. Another page. The writing shifted again, slower, weaker. "I am being taken somewhere beneath the palace. I lose the bond, I will still find my way back." A pause, then. "I must survive for them." The words "for them" were written twice, as if the writer needed to remind herself why she was still breathing. The Alpha King did not notice when the room grew colder, or when his hand tightened unconsciously around the edge of the desk. The next page contained only a few lines. They were born safely. I saw their faces before I was separated from them. A long silence followed. The king did not turn the page immediately. Something inside him refused. But eventually he did. The final entry was different, not rushed, not uncertain, final, deliberate. My sons ever return. The Alpha King's eyes held on the words longer than the rest. The chamber felt completely still. Even the distant sounds of the palace above seemed to vanish. The kingdom will burn with the truth. Followed, heavy, unbroken. Then, somewhere far above the hidden chamber, a distant bell sounded once, cut to black. The moment the final line of the diary was spoken above the hidden chamber, the entire palace changed again. Not slowly. Instantly. A deep warning bell echoed through the upper towers once, then again. Then every level of the palace responded at the same time. Corridors that had just settled into uneasy silence exploded into movement. Doors were thrown open. Orders shouted without full understanding. Guards rushed in every direction at once as if the palace itself had lost control of its own structure. Something had breached the kingdom, and it was not outside. It was already inside. Deep within the eastern passages, hidden doors that had remained sealed for years were forced open from both sides at once. Not by accident, not by collapse, by design. Figures moved through the lower corridors wearing dark coverings that blended into the chaos of shifting light and smoke. No royal insignia, no identification. Only precision in every step. They were not attacking randomly. They were searching for something or someone. Above them, in the western tower, the first impact hit the chamber wall without warning. Stone shattered inward as a controlled strike tore through reinforced stone. 3 attackers entered at once, silent, fast, coordinated. The older twin reacted immediately. He pushed the younger twin back just as a blade passed through the space where he had been standing a second earlier. The attackers adjusted instantly. No hesitation. No confusion. These were not ordinary intruders. They had been trained to anticipate movement. The younger twin tried to stand again, but the older twin stopped him with a quick motion. One attacker lunged again. The younger twin reacted on instinct. A force erupted from him without warning. The attacker was thrown backward into the stone wall, so hard the structure cracked on impact. The second attacker froze for only a fraction of a second. That was enough. The chamber floor beneath them began to respond. Faint ancient markings hidden beneath layers of stone flickered to life. The air inside the room shifted, heavier, unstable. The attackers hesitated for the first time. But outside the chamber, the palace had already fallen into full collapse. Wolves filled the corridors. Human bodies shifted into massive armored forms mid-run as instinct overtook structure. Roars echoed through the halls. Steel collided with bone and armor. Firelight reflected across broken windows as movement spread across every visible surface of the palace. And still, the attackers kept coming. Because this was not a raid of chaos. It was a search operation. Inside the upper corridors, the Alpha King moved without waiting for reports or council direction. He did not stop to ask what was happening. He already knew what mattered. The twins. Every instinct led him toward the western tower. When he arrived at the lower corridor, the scene had already broken apart into scattered combat. Bodies lay unconscious. Others still fought. Some attackers were retreating deeper into the structure as if trying to reach a specific location. The western tower chamber. Then he saw them. The older twin stood at the chamber entrance, blocking the younger twin behind him. The younger twin was injured. A wound marked his side, blood darkening the edge of his clothing. His breathing was uneven. But he was still standing. The attackers inside the chamber were fewer now, and less certain. The Alpha King stepped forward. The moment he entered the corridor, the atmosphere changed, not because he spoke, not because he commanded, but because presence alone altered everything around him. Even the fighting outside slowed for a fraction of a second. The Alpha did not look at them. His eyes locked directly onto the attackers, one movement. That was all it took. He crossed the distance and struck the nearest attacker before the blade could rise fully. A second followed instantly, then a third. Within moments, the chamber was cleared. Silence returned too quickly, but it was not peace, it was aftermath. The younger twin swayed slightly where he stood. His injury had worsened during the attack. He tried to remain upright, but his strength was fading. The Alpha moved forward without hesitation. He reached him before he could fall, and caught him. The younger twin stiffened instantly, instinct reacting before thought, his body tensed as if resisting contact. But the Alpha did not let go. For a moment, neither moved. Behind them, the palace still burned with distant conflict. But inside that space, everything narrowed. The younger twin's breathing slowed unevenly. His silver eyes lifted slightly. And for the first time since arriving at the palace, something changed in his expression. Not trust, not acceptance, but recognition of something real, something unspoken. The Alpha's hold tightened slightly without him noticing. As if something inside him refused to release the boy, the bond between them reacted violently in that moment. A surge of pressure spread through the corridor. Lights flickered along the walls. Even the distant fighting outside seemed to pause for a second as wolves felt the shift without understanding it. The younger twin felt it too, not control, not command, but connection, unstable, unfinished. Then he spoke, his voice low, but clear enough to cut through everything else. "Mother is still alive." The words stopped the entire corridor. Even the Alpha's movement froze. The silence that followed felt heavier than noise. The younger twin continued. "She didn't die 12 years ago." A pause, then. "She was taken." Alpha's expression changed for the first time in the entire night. Not anger, not authority, something deeper, uncertain. Because the words did not feel like accusation. They felt like truth finally arriving too late to be ignored. And somewhere deep inside the palace, the real enemy that had been hidden for 12 years finally began to move again. The words from the younger twin did not fade inside the corridor. They stayed there, heavy, unmoving, as if the palace itself was refusing to accept them. For a long moment, the Alpha King did not speak. The injured boy was still in his arms, breathing unevenly, warm blood soaking through the edge of his cloak. But the Alpha's attention was no longer on the battle outside. It was somewhere far beyond the palace walls, far beyond the present moment, because something inside him had cracked open, not from pain. From recognition, a truth that refused to stay buried any longer. "Taken." The word left him quietly, almost without voice. The younger twin did not look away. "She never left you," he said again. "She was removed." Corridor behind them remained unstable. Distant fighting still echoed through the palace. But inside that space, everything felt suspended. The Alpha slowly lowered his gaze to the boy in his arms. For the first time that night, his grip loosened slightly, not from weakness, from realization. Fragments of memory returned again. But now they no longer felt broken. They felt arranged. Like something had been placed incorrectly inside his mind from the beginning. He saw her again, not as a memory fading in and out, but clearly standing in front of him in the moonlit chamber, her voice shaking, trying to explain something urgently. "I didn't do this. I swear to you." But there were other voices in that memory, behind her, behind him, speaking too clearly, guiding his attention. Reinforcing a version of events he never questioned. The Alpha's breathing slowed, because he suddenly understood something that made no sense before. He had not only lost her, he had been led away from her. A wave of pressure hit his chest again. But this time it was different, not bond pain, not reaction. Realization. The older twin stepped forward slightly. "Someone wanted her erased," he said quietly. The Alpha's eyes lifted slowly toward him, and for the first time he did not deny it. The younger twin continued. "They didn't just take her away from you. They made you believe she was the enemy." Followed a deep one, the kind that does not come from absence of sound, but from absence of certainty. The Alpha slowly straightened, still holding the injured boy. But now his expression was different, not command, not control, something far more unstable, understanding, and loss. Inside his mind, another memory surfaced, not of her, but of himself, standing in the throne chamber years ago. Surrounded by council members, listening, nodding, accepting information without resistance, a voice repeating the same claim again and again. She betrayed the kingdom. She intended to overthrow the throne. She must be erased. The time it felt like truth. Now it felt like repetition, like something enforced rather than discovered. The Alpha's hand tightened slightly, not around the boy, around the realization forming inside him. The younger twin watched him carefully, then spoke again. "She was never your enemy." A pause. "Then she was your target." The words landed too sharply. The Alpha's chest tightened. For the first time in years, his breathing faltered, not from injury, from clarity. Images returned faster now, but no longer fragmented, more complete. Her face again, fear this time, not of him, of something behind him. A shadow in the council chamber, a presence that never spoke directly, but always influenced direction. The Alpha's eyes narrowed slightly, because now he could see it, not fully, but enough. Someone had been shaping everything, not only the kingdom's belief, even his memory. A slow realization formed inside him. If that was true, then every action he took 12 years ago had been guided. His hand loosened slightly around the injured twin. The boy remained conscious, watching him. The Alpha spoke quietly. "I was made to believe it." No one responded. The palace above them still burned with conflict. But inside the corridor, something heavier had taken hold. The Alpha slowly lowered his head. And for the first time since the beginning of the night, his voice broke slightly. "I destroyed her." The words were not spoken with authority, they were spoken with disbelief, as if he was hearing them for the first time. The older twin did not answer immediately, then finally, "You were used." Alpha closed his eyes briefly. And in that moment, something inside him collapsed, not physically, emotionally, because now the truth had structure. She did not betray him. She did not abandon him. She was removed. And he had been made to believe otherwise. Silence filled the corridor again. Then, far beyond the palace walls, deep inside forbidden territory no one was allowed to cross, a figure moved through the darkness. A woman, alive, watching, and returning. The silence inside the palace did not last. It broke first in the outer gates, then the courtyards, then the inner halls. One by one, guards began to freeze in place without understanding why, not because of an attack, not because of force, but because something far heavier was approaching. The wind outside the palace shifted suddenly, not naturally, as if the entire atmosphere had changed direction. Torches along the royal path flickered violently, some went out completely. And the palace doors at the far end of the main hall slowly opened on their own. No command was given. No guard dared stop them, because every soldier standing there felt it before they saw it. The bond, not just reacting, reawakening. A deep pressure spread through the entire royal structure as if the palace itself remembered something it had been forced to forget. Then she stepped inside. No announcement. No ceremony, no hesitation, just presence, and the entire kingdom froze. She did not look the same as the memory preserved in royal archives, not fragile, not soft. Not the version the court had painted into history. She stood taller now, her movements controlled, measured. Every step carried the weight of survival, not royalty. Her face was unchanged in structure, but everything else had hardened. Her gaze swept across the hall slowly, not searching for recognition, assessing danger, reading every exit, every guard, every movement. As if she had learned to enter places expecting betrayal before welcome, whispers began immediately. But no one spoke loudly enough to break the silence she carried with her. The entire royal court rose instinctively, then stopped. Because what followed was not fear alone. It was disbelief. Knights dropped to one knee, council members followed. Even guards who had sworn loyalty to the crown lowered their heads without command. Not in obedience, in shock. Because the woman they had been told was a traitor. Stood before them alive, the Alpha did not move. He could not. The injured twin still remained supported near him, but even he had gone still. Because the moment she stepped into the hall, everything inside the Alpha changed. The bond that had flickered violently for hours finally surged fully to life. Not pain, not confusion, recognition. It struck him so strongly that his breath stopped entirely. The air between them tightened, invisible but overwhelming, as if the space itself could not hold the connection. The woman's eyes lifted slowly and landed directly on him. No smile, no relief, only stillness. The kind formed after years of carrying something too heavy to release. The Alpha's voice tried to form. Nothing came out, not one word, not her name, not an explanation, not even a breath of certainty. Because everything he had believed for 12 years stood in front of him now, alive. And aware, she took another step forward. The hall remained frozen. Then she spoke. Her voice was calm. But it carried something sharper underneath. "You remember me now?" A pause, her eyes did not leave his. "After you erased me." The words struck the hall harder than any weapon. The Alpha's expression tightened, not in anger, in recognition of truth he could no longer deny. She continued, "You buried my name. You taught an entire kingdom to forget I existed." Her gaze shifted briefly across the kneeling court, then returned to him. "And now you stand here." A slow breath. As if memory alone can undo what was done. Alpha finally stepped forward, one step, then stopped. His voice came out lower than expected, not commanding, not controlled, broken in its restraint. "I was made to believe you betrayed us." A faint reaction passed through her expression, not surprise, not shock, something closer to disappointment. She tilted her head slightly. "You were made to believe." A quiet pause followed, then her voice sharpened. "Or did you choose to believe it because it was easier?" The hall shifted uneasily. No one dared interrupt. The bond between them intensified again, so strong now that even the air felt unstable. The Alpha's chest tightened. Because that question had no immediate answer, and she knew it. She stepped closer now, close enough that every guard in the hall tensed instinctively. But no one moved, because no one dared interrupt what was unfolding, not even the council. She looked directly into his eyes. Spoke with controlled anger now. You erased me. You buried my name like I never mattered. A pause, her voice dropped slightly. And you never once came looking for the truth. Hit the hall again, he did not respond, because there was no defense strong enough for what she was saying. Her expression hardened further. And now you want forgiveness. The words echoed through the entire chamber. The bond between them surged violently again, but this time it felt unstable, unresolved. The Alpha lowered his gaze slightly, as if the weight of everything was finally pressing down fully. Then, a slow movement from the upper platform broke the silence. Someone stepped forward, not a guard, not a council member, a high-ranking voice of authority within the kingdom, the one who had stood beside the throne for years, the one who had shaped decisions when the Alpha was absent or uncertain. The kingdom's trusted voice, the one who had never been questioned. He raised his hand slightly and spoke loudly enough for the entire hall to hear. Should not be standing here. His gaze turned toward the returned woman, then sharpened, because she was removed for treason. A ripple moved through the hall immediately, whispers rising, uncertainty returning. He stepped forward another pace, and now she returns with illusions of innocence, voice hardened, while dragging forbidden bloodline power into the kingdom. The woman's eyes slowly turned toward him, cold, focused, dangerous, and for the first time since entering the palace, something inside the hall shifted again. Because the real accusation had finally begun. The hall did not remain quiet for long. The accusation hanging in the air was enough to fracture what little control the palace still had. Whispers spread across the floor like fire catching dry wood. Knights shifted their stance. Council members turned toward each other in confusion. Even the guards who had sworn absolute loyalty to the crown began to hesitate, because now there were no longer two sides. There were three. The Alpha King stood between them all. The woman who had returned from exile remained unmoving at the center of the hall, and the trusted voice of the kingdom stood above them all, calm and composed as if nothing had changed. But something had changed. Everything had. The older twin stepped forward first, slow, measured, his gaze fixed on the one speaking from the raised platform, not fear, not anger, calculation. Then he spoke. You've controlled every version of the story from the beginning. The hall shifted slightly, eyes turned toward him. The voice above narrowed his gaze. Careful, he warned. You are a guest in this kingdom. Younger twin moved immediately after his brother, still weakened from earlier injuries but no longer silent. His voice carried raw pressure. A pause, his eyes lifted. You are the reason she was taken. A ripple moved through the hall again. The Alpha's attention sharpened instantly. The woman turned her head slightly toward the twins for the first time, not in surprise, but in understanding. The older twin continued. You were inside the council before she vanished. A stepped forward. You had access to every sealed order. Pause, and you were the only one who gained from her removal. The hall began to shift uneasily now. The council members looked between each other. The trusted voice remained still, but his expression tightened slightly. The younger twin stepped forward again despite his wound. You wanted the throne close enough to control. His breathing sharpened, but not strong enough to resist you. A sudden silence dropped. Even the guards stopped moving. The Alpha King finally turned toward the raised platform slowly. For the first time that night, he looked at the one who had stood beside him for years, the one who had guided decisions, the one who had shaped the kingdom's direction, the one who had repeated the same truth for 12 years. She betrayed the crown. She must be removed. Alpha's voice came out low, different from before. What did you? Faint smile appeared on the man's face, not warm, not kind, controlled. You are speaking under emotional influence. He gestured slightly toward the hall. This kingdom has laws. Then the older twin spoke again, but this time his voice carried something sharper. Laws can be rewritten. A pause, and memories can be altered. The hall went completely still. The Alpha's expression changed instantly, not fully understanding, but recognizing the implication. The younger twin raised his hand slightly, and for the first time the air inside the hall reacted. A faint surge of energy spread outward from him, uncontrolled, raw. The ancient markings hidden beneath the palace floor began to respond again. The trusted voice took a step back for the first time, but he recovered quickly. This is madness, he said firmly. They are manipulating you. No one moved to support him immediately because doubt had already spread. The older twin turned slightly toward the alpha. You said your memory was incomplete. A pause. What if it was never incomplete? Silence followed. The alpha's breath slowed. The implication landed too clearly now. The younger twin suddenly shifted. His body moved instinctively. Something sharp struck through the air from above the hall. A hidden strike aimed not at the alpha, not at the woman. At the twins, the older twin reacted too late. But the younger twin stepped forward without hesitation. The strike landed. Silence broke instantly. Gasps spread across the hall. The younger twin staggered backward. Blood appeared quickly at his side. The alpha moved immediately. No hesitation. He reached him before he could fall completely. The younger twin collapsed into his arms. The hall erupted in chaos again. But the alpha did not look up, not immediately. His focus was only on the boy in his arms, breathing shallow, fatting slightly. The bond between them reacted violently. But this time it felt unstable, like something trying to hold together under strain. The woman stepped forward sharply. Her expression changed for the first time since entering the hall, not anger, fear. The alpha's voice broke as he looked down at the injured twin. Stay with me. The younger twin's eyes shifted slightly, weak, yet still aware, and he looked past the alpha toward the one above the hall, the trusted voice. A faint realization formed in his expression even as his strength faded. The alpha finally looked up slowly. Something inside him broke fully in that moment, not rage, not command, something deeper, and the hall felt it immediately, pressure rising, uncontrolled. The bond between him and the woman surged again, then suddenly flickered, unstable, weakening. The woman's expression changed instantly. She felt it too. The connection that had just returned was slipping again. And in the silence that followed, the trusted voice spoke once more calmly. You see, they were never meant to return. The palace did not settle after the strike. It fractured, not physically at first, but socially. Whispers turned into arguments. Arguments turned into divided loyalties. And within moments, the entire kingdom was no longer unified under one crown. Some guards stepped forward toward the platform above the hall. Others turned their weapons away from it. A line had been drawn without being declared. The Alpha King stood at the center of it all, still holding the injured younger twin. The boy's breathing was weaker now, but his eyes remained open, still watching, still aware. The woman stood a few steps away, not reaching him, not retreating, frozen in a place between recognition and distance. And above them all, the trusted voice remained standing, calm, composed, as if nothing had changed. But the palace no longer responded to him the same way. Something had already shifted beyond his control. The older twin stepped forward slowly, placing himself between the platform and the rest of the hall. His voice carried clearly. This ends now. No one interrupted him, not even the guards, because something about the moment made resistance feel pointless. The Alpha finally moved, not toward battle, not toward command, toward decision. He gently lowered the younger twin onto the stone floor. The boy's hand still gripped part of his cloak weakly, as if refusing to let go completely. The Alpha looked down at him for a long moment, then stood, slowly, turning toward the hall, toward the woman, toward the council. Toward everything he had built, and everything he had destroyed without knowing it. For a moment, no one spoke. Then he stepped forward, one step, then another. The entire hall watched. The trusted voice above narrowed his eyes slightly. You are still bound by law, he said. You cannot undo what has already been judged. Alpha did not respond immediately. He stopped at the center of the hall, and for the first time in years he removed his crown. It hit the floor with a sound that echoed too loudly, not as defeat. As release, gasps spread instantly. Some guards dropped their weapons, others froze completely. The Alpha turned slightly toward the council, then spoke. His voice was no longer controlled in the way they had known. It carried something far more dangerous, truth. She did not betray the kingdom. Absolute silence, he continued. She was taken from me by manipulation I failed to see. A pause, his gaze shifted slightly. I was made to believe it. The trusted voice above the hall finally moved. You are speaking against your own judgment. Alpha lifted his eyes slowly. No, a single word, firm, clear. This kingdom judged her with my blindness. The hall shifted again, uneasy, uncertain. The Alpha turned fully now toward the woman. She remained still, watching him, guarded, but no longer distant. He took another step forward, then stopped directly in front of her. For the first time, his voice lowered, not as ruler, not as Alpha, but as someone standing at the edge of everything he had lost. I failed to protect you. A pause. I failed to see the truth. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, from realization. Then he slowly lowered himself to his knees. The entire hall reacted instantly, shock, disbelief, silence so deep it felt unreal. A king does not kneel, not in front of anyone, but he did, in front of her, not as a symbol, not as a ruler. As the one who once shared a bond with her before everything was taken apart, the woman's expression changed slightly. For the first time, something broke through her guarded calm, not anger, not distance, something closer to exhaustion. The Alpha's voice softened. I cannot undo what was done. A pause. I can no longer live with what was believed. Stretched between them, then he continued. I restore your name, a breath, place, everything that was taken from you. The hall remained frozen. Even the council did not move. The trusted voice above tightened his expression slightly, but no one responded to him now. The Alpha lifted his head slightly and spoke again. To the kingdom. His voice strengthened. She is not a traitor. A pause. She is the one I failed to protect. The words spread through the hall like a final breaking point. Some guards lowered their weapons completely, others turned away from the platform. The structure of loyalty itself was changing. The woman finally stepped forward slowly, carefully, until she stood directly in front of him. Her voice came out lower than before, controlled, but no longer distant. You cannot fix what was taken. Alpha did not look away. I know. A pause. I can stand with you now. Followed, long, heavy, then she looked at him properly, not as a king, not as a myth, but as someone who had once been everything to her before everything collapsed. The bond between them responded again, not violently this time, but steadily, rebuilding. Behind them, the younger twins slowly began to stir. The older twin knelt beside him immediately. The boy's eyes opened weakly. And for the first time, he did not look at the Alpha with anger, only exhaustion. And understanding, the Alpha turned slightly, saw him, moved immediately, kneeling beside him as well. The younger twin did not pull away this time, only watched him, quiet, weakened, then finally spoke. Lose her again. The words struck deeper than any accusation. The Alpha closed his eyes briefly, then nodded once. The woman watched both of them. And for the first time since entering the palace, her expression softened slightly. Not fully forgiving, not fully healed, but no longer alone. Above them, the trusted voice stood completely still now, watching the collapse of everything he had built. But no one looked at him anymore, because the kingdom had already changed direction. The Alpha slowly rose from his knees again, not as a ruler restored, but as someone standing at the beginning of something uncertain. He looked at her, then at the twins, then at the broken kingdom around them, and spoke quietly. Whatever comes next. We face it together. A long silence followed. Then the final words echoed through the hall like a closing mark on history. History remembered the Alpha King. A pause. But legends remembered the one he failed to destroy.